What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to another episode of Abandoned Auto. Today, you can see behind me, we're back with the 79 F350. This is my dad's truck. I do have a video out, so go check that out already. But we're gonna keep working on this truck. Got some parts in. Update, there's something I've done off camera with my dad to this truck. This truck now has a rear gas tank. If you watch the video of my 79 F150, I'll put a tag up on the screen, you'll see that I got my dad's old, well, not old tank, but he ordered a tank, 19-gallon tank, which is standard for these trucks for the rear. And I ended up buying it off of him because he went a different route. And this is that different route. This is a 38-gallon tank, so twice as much as the 19-gallon tank. Fits in the stock place. It hangs down a little lower, but they send you these longer bolts and spacers and stuff, so you can still use your stock straps. And I got this, I believe, off of Summit for him, but LMC Truck is the one that has a sending unit for this, because this kit comes with a sending unit modification kit where you can extend your sending unit, but you have to mess with soldering and everything else to extend your sending unit. So if you don't want to mess with that, LMC Truck sells a 38-gallon sending unit for this tank. They also sell the tank, but it's a little more expensive on their website. So we've got that in, got it on off camera just because we wanted to get it in while it was raining quickly. So that's in, we already tackled that. So it's running off its own tank, but there's 3 things that I need to do to this truck today. So the truck does have a fuel leak right at the fuel pump. We're assuming it's this piece, where my finger at, there it is. Right there, the inlet metal piece. Hopefully it's not the flare on that line or the line itself, but we're gonna go ahead and replace the fuel pump. Hopefully that fixes our issue. I'm also gonna be tearing this 4-barrel off because it leaks fuel all over the place, and we're gonna be rebuilding that 4-barrel. I've never rebuilt a 4-barrel. I've rebuilt a couple 2-barrels, but it'll be a learning experience for us all. Well, the third thing we're doing on this truck, the valve covers, especially this passenger one, leak like crazy. So we've got gaskets. So we're gonna go ahead and get started on those. That way, when I'm doing these, use some RTV on both sides and let it tack up before you tighten stuff down. So when you get that done, let it tack up while I'm doing all the other stuff, and then come back at the very end and tighten those down. Well, the carburetor's off. We're gonna go ahead and start pulling the valve covers off to get those tackled, and I'll come back to the carburetor. But I did find something interesting. So this was the gasket that was on the bottom, like your EGR and that. But there's a gasket on the bottom of the carburetor too. So this has 2 base gaskets for some reason. That might have been a vacuum leak. Well, both valve covers are off, and there the engine is. So we're just going to take time, clean up all along here, clean all the old gasket off, put some RTV, let it sit, and then we're going to do the same thing on this side, clean this all up, put some RTV, the new gasket on top, let it sit. On the grand scheme of things, these are pretty clean valve covers, so keep going, piecing it back together. So we've got a thin layer of that gasket sealer, that gasket maker, whatever it is, on the actual heads on both sides. So we're gonna let that tack up, and in the meantime, I'm gonna do the fuel pump. We'll tackle that, and then we'll do the carburetor, and then by the time I'm done with that, that should be pretty much good to put the valve covers back on. So we got a 1/2-inch flare wrench right here. Just break that loose. Then we're gonna take this loose. There's 2 bolts. Should be, I think, 9/16. They're gonna be a pain to get to, but doable. And that thing should just come right out. Old pump is out. Don't forget to clean up that gasket, the rest of that gasket off there. Clean up that surface, and here's the new one. So we'll get that in. All right, we got the new one in. wherever the old one is over here. Let's tackle the carburetor. Okay, we're going to tear into this carburetor. Right now I'm just tearing it down and cleaning it, and there's the rebuild kit right there. So I'm going to put a time lapse on of me tearing this down. Well, now that it's pretty torn down, I'm going to start cleaning everything up. Okay, carburetor is back together. The reason I didn't film the whole thing is I was referencing a YouTube video the whole time, so I had no idea what I was doing. But it's back together. I got to find a couple more vacuum plugs because they were cracked, so that was also a vacuum leak. But in the meantime, I've already have the valve covers on here setting up, so I'm gonna go ahead and snug those down, I believe, and we'll clean up that base and go find some plugs for the vacuum lines, put that carburetor back on. All right, valve covers are back on. We've got to put the cruise control back where it's supposed to go, carburetor back on. Okay, everything's back together. Valve covers are tight, carburetor's on, everything's hooked back up. Distributor wires are all back together. All it's missing is the air cleaner, but I'm gonna wait because there's no fuel now down there in the carburetor. There's also no fuel in the fuel pump itself. So I'm gonna try to prime this with some starting fluid and see if we can get it to fire up. A little bit of starting fluid. See if it lights off. It's going to take a minute for that to start kicking fuel up. Let's see if we're getting fluid. I bet those are sticking. Which you guys saw in the video. I didn't see it, but you guys saw in the video. It is that back float sticking. So it's definitely flooded. Yep, you can see it. It's just spewing out of the back. Let me fix that real quick. Okay, as I suspected, the float levels were off because when I put the new float and all that together, I didn't adjust them. So I'm gonna let it run for a little bit, and we're gonna check the fuel level on both the front and back bowls. Well, the carburetor's back off. A couple things I noticed. One, that's a brand new gasket that's literally just crumbling in my hand. Carburetor started leaking from that and from here, and I don't even know how this is possible, but that's supposed to be on top of it like that. That's flush inside of the carburetor. So I gotta figure out how to get that out, because that is not supposed to be like that. It should come out like this. So I'm gonna tear into this, take that back plate off, see if I can't figure out how to get that back out, and figure out what I'm gonna do about O-rings, or about gaskets, because that literally just disintegrated, and it's a brand new gasket. Okay, crisis averted. Was able to get that to come back out. Everything still works. So we're gonna put it all back together. My struggle now is gonna be trying to figure out what I'm gonna do for gaskets, because those all decided to disintegrate. It's the next morning. It got dark and my phone died, so I just kind of finished everything up, but it gave it a chance for the valve covers to sit overnight, tighten down. Carburetor's back on. Off camera, I watched a YouTube video and figured out how to adjust it. So went ahead and did that. So all that's left is to see if it smokes, which we'll fire it up, let it run for a little bit, see if it's smoking any, and then to see if there's any fuel dripping. And the only reason that I did the carburetor rebuild wasn't that it wasn't running right, it was because it was dripping fuel all over the place out of all of the different gaskets. So I'm gonna fire it up, let it run for just a couple of seconds, and we'll see if there's any fuel leaks. It's been sitting overnight, and we still have wetness along this gasket. So I'm wondering if it's dripping fuel from here, because it's still wet all underneath there. There's no fuel dripping underneath. That's good. So the fuel pump fixed it. But I think we still have a fuel leak somewhere up here. And I don't see any wet spots back there off the valve cover, so that's good. I took it up the road. The carburetor doesn't seem to be leaking anymore. Valve covers are smoky. I can't tell if it's from what had leaked on them before and it's burning it off, or if they're actually actively leaking. So I'm gonna let it run for probably 10 minutes or so to see if it kind of clears up. If it clears up, then it's probably just the oil that was leaking on it before. But I felt all the way around it and I couldn't feel anything wet. So I think it's just burning off the manifolds. I'm hoping it's just burning off the manifolds. So I'll check in about 10 minutes and see if it's still smoking like it is. Well, it's been like 15 minutes. They were still smoking pretty bad, so I went ahead and killed it. I'm gonna let it cool off. I can't figure out for the life of me where the leak's coming from. It's not an exhaust leak. I went down and checked all that already. It's gotta be somewhere on actual valve cover. But right now I'm running to go do some paperwork for my 79 F-150. So I'm gonna come back, and when I come back, I'll continue digging into this. But right now, the carburetor does not leak, which is good, and the fuel pump does not leak. So we've got 2 out of the 3 things done. We're gonna go ahead and just let this sit and cool off. Well, it's been a few days, and the valve covers seem to have a small leak somewhere. So it's not smoking nearly as bad as it was, but on a cold start, it doesn't want to idle. So there's a high idle adjustment over by the choke. If you turn it in, it makes it to where the idle comes up for cold idle. If you turn it back out, it turns the idle down. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn that in. Oh, we turn that all the way in. It's idling smoother. Usually on a cold idle, it would just die. So it's actually idling. We'll let it warm up. The carburetor still seems to be leaking, but it's running smoother than it was. We adjusted the idle air mixture just a little bit and wrenching it a little bit. And it took a lot of that stumble out of it, especially like if you would floor it, it would kind of backfire and then take off. So it was leaning out a little bit. So we got that fixed. I think we're gonna probably get a different gasket set, because like I said before, these gaskets were just disintegrating on me. So we'll get a different gasket set and put it back together. Get a quality gasket set. But other than that, it seems to be running a lot better. It's still cold, it's warming up, but it's idling. Because before, if you try to idle it when it was cold, it would just sputter and die. You'd have to feather the gas, keep it alive until it was warm. So we adjusted the choke and then found that high idle screw and adjusted it too. So we'll let this warm up. We'll take it down the road real quick. All right, we're in the cab. It's very quiet compared to the F100, especially for this being a big block. I mean, the carpet helps a lot, but let's take this down the road real quick. We'll just see what kind of power it's got, let it warm up, because obviously it's still cold, but we're just gonna up and down the road, kind of get a feel for it. I have a feeling, maybe I'm wrong, but I have a feeling I may be adjusting the regular idle next to try to idle it down once it warms up, but I could be wrong. Who knows? We'll see. My dad's got brand new 10-ply tires on this thing because it's a 1-ton F350, and they ride stiff, I can already tell you that. But we're just putting down the road, not really going fast, but I'm just gonna punch it and see what happens. Good grief. Okay, yep, that 460 is alive. You can feel the whole front of this truck lift off, and it pushed me back in the seat. So that was pretty fun. And I've witnessed this thing do a nasty one-wheel peel already, so I know it's capable of it. Brakes are great. My dad adjusted the rear brakes while I was busy working on something else, so brakes work great. Let's just see if I can get the squeal in reverse. Ready? Yep, it'll line them up in reverse. That 460 means business. Just gonna drop her down into first real quick. Not even gonna touch the brake, just gas. Ready? Squeal them tires. That's to the floor, no backfiring or anything. So it's not leaned out or anything. It seems to be driving pretty good. Runs smooth. So we're gonna get it back to park and see what the idle's at. Well, we're park again. I feel like that idle could be turned down just a little bit. Let's turn it down just a little bit. So on this 4-barrel, your high idle's on the choke side. Your regular idle is right here. And we're just gonna turn it down a little bit. All right, it has been a minute, but we are back on my dad's 79 F350. The valve covers have sealed. We tightened them a little bit more, let it sit for a little bit. And I think what we were seeing a lot of was just the residual stuff off the exhaust burning off. But been drying it for about a week, maybe a week and a half, and it does not smoke anymore out of the exhaust or off the valve covers or anything. So now what we're going to be working on is, hopefully for the last time, taking this carburetor off and sealing it. We got new gaskets, different set, quality set. So really it's just leaking out of this front bowl and that back bowl. So I'm going to take the carburetor off, put those gaskets on, throw it all back on here, and fingers crossed, hopefully that fixes that problem. So we've already fixed the fuel issue leaking down at the fuel pump, and now we fixed the valve covers. Last step is to fix this carburetor and adjust it a little bit. It doesn't want to really run when it's cold, so I need to adjust that idle up for the choke. Other than that, it's been running good, just leaks. So I'm gonna pull this off. Floats are pretty much adjusted where they need to be, so all I need to do is new gaskets and adjust that choke. All right, carburetor's back on the operating table. We've got our new gaskets. So should just be 4 screws on the front, on the back, and then this rod right here. Hopefully those O-rings are just gonna seal. Those were a pain in the butt. So yeah, let's just take this all back apart and reseal it. The discovery, there apparently are gaskets in each of these holes. I didn't know that because they were all flush, and so I can almost guarantee that was a leak too. And I looked at the old kit, and sure enough, they were replacement gaskets. So do the one bowl, got gaskets for the other one too, but we're gonna go ahead and put these better gaskets in since they're higher quality, and we already have them. But I guarantee that was probably at least one of the places where it was leaking. It's all back together. Let's go put it back on the truck. Well, we're driving the F350 down the road. I put the carburetor back on and started it up. It didn't seem to have very many or any leaks. I went ahead also and adjusted the idle mixture, fuel air mixture screws. So right now I'm just taking it down the road and seeing how it drives. And I'm gonna bring it back and see if there's any leaks. I didn't see any, but once it's warm, I'm gonna pop the hood again and see if there's any leaks. So we got back to the house. There's a little bit of dripping back here on the accelerator pump, but nothing major. So consider that a win. Well, I think that's gonna do it for this truck. It's back together, runs, drives, doesn't leak anymore from valve covers, the fuel pump, or the carburetor. So that's all back together, runs and drives real well. My dad doesn't know if he wants to sell this or keep it, but for now he's keeping it, putting a little bit more time and effort into it. I might be switching benches with him, front benches, because I've got a better one in my truck that's right over here. It's also for sale, but I might be switching him benches because his truck's a little bit in better condition, but my front bench is nicer, so I think we might be switching. But other than that, there's really not much more that I think we're gonna be doing to this thing, just a little bit of TLC stuff. But I think that's gonna do it for this video. Please like, subscribe, comment down below what else you want to see. But check out the rest of these videos, and I'll see you in the next one.